This is the Positive EQ Perspective, where you'll find a more positive outlook on life by developing your emotional intelligence. My name is Kirsty Gwynn. I'm a coaching psychologist and speaker, and I'm passionate about helping people to experience more calm, contentment, and joy every day. Traveling by airplane arouses a deep sense of anxiety for many people. And Anxiety UK actually estimates that at least 1 in 10 people experience fear of flying. So this is a very prevalent fear. And today, what I want to share with you is 4 ways that you can deal with fear of flying so that as the world starts to open up again, as you're able to jet set off to whatever destinations you've been dreaming of and see more of the world, as slowly that becomes possible again, then fear of flying need not get in the way. However, if this specific type of fear doesn't apply to you, these 4 strategies I want you to know are really useful when it comes to working through any anxiety-provoking situation as well. But I'm going to specifically be gearing it around fear of flying. So the first step is to recognize that your fear doesn't reflect reality. So the protective system in the brain is the part of the brain that's responsible for keeping you safe. And it weighs up whatever evidence it has about the particular situation and then makes an assessment about whether you're safe in that situation or not. So if it decides that you could get hurt, what it then does is sets off its anxiety alarm. So it bombards you with a sense of fear and lots of worried thoughts as a way to let you know that you should avoid this situation at all costs, right? You got to run away from it, you got to get out of it. And that's really what that anxiety alarm is there to do. But in the case of flying, as with many other fears, the protective system is so zoomed in on the negative evidence that it's actually not making an accurate assessment. The more aware you are of a risk, the more afraid you'll feel. That doesn't mean that there is actually more risk. It just means that there's more awareness. So chances are that your brain is over-focused on plane crashes that you've heard about on the news or seen in movies, and the scary safety sequence that happens before you take off. But what it's not taking into account is the reality that more than 99.99% of flights arrive safely. The chance of a plane crash happening is as low as 1 in 11 million. And new technology has meant that turbulence, which makes many people feel nervous, hasn't caused a plane crash in over 4 decades. So the first step, therefore, is to consider those figures and to acknowledge that your fear does not reflect reality, and to realize that you can't trust or believe that fear. Just because that fear or that anxiety is there doesn't mean that you're unsafe. It's almost like an alarm going off in a faulty way. So how do we actually turn this into an action step? When you land safely at your destination on the other side, and remember that there is a 99.99% chance that you will, be careful not to believe fear when you kind of have this sense of, phew, I made it, right? I managed to make it out of the situation alive. And instead, try and shift your perspective to intentionally point out to yourself that arriving safely was not actually the exception, but the rule, right? So just grounding yourself in that and saying to yourself, it makes sense that I arrived safely because flying is actually a very safe form of transport, right? The second thing that we can do is train ourselves to stay calm. Yes, we can train ourselves to stay calm. So in the time preceding your flight, you can actually mentally practice staying calm on a flight, which will prepare you to be a lot calmer during the real thing. So this is a process called systematic desensitization, and it's from what we call cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's one of the techniques that is often used in cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's the type of therapy that is often best for overcoming phobias. So chances are that if you have fear of flying, if you have fear around this, then even imagining taking a flight or talking about taking a flight is going to bring up some fear or some anxiety. So what systematic desensitization does is it pairs the thing that makes you anxious, like flying, with different relaxation techniques so that you can train your body to stay calm in that situation, essentially train it out of this fear or this anxiety response. So what we do is we start by making a list of the different parts of the flights that make you anxious, right? So what you would do is you'd really create, let's say, get a piece of paper and create a document where you might write down the least anxiety provoking thing to the most anxiety provoking, right? So the first thing on your list should feel uncomfortable but manageable, right? So this might be, for example, that the first thing on your list is arriving at the airport, whereas maybe experiencing turbulence is quite far down the list, right? So your first step might even be imagining flying, right? So once we've got our list, we would then start with just step one, that thing that is the least anxiety provoking. We put our hand over our heart and just begin by taking some nice slow deep breaths into your belly, right? You can actually refer to what I'm going to share later in terms of when we talk about breathing, and slowly using the breath to calm the body. So once you start to feel more relaxed, begin to imagine the first step of your anxiety list. Your anxiety will rise, but just keep breathing until you calm down again, right? So we're really training ourselves like, hey, I'm safe in this situation, even though we're just doing that step one, which might just be imagining arriving at the airport, right? We can actually trick our brain into thinking that we are there, right? So I'd like you to repeat this step until you're able to stay calm while imagining it. So this might take a number of days, or you might be ready to move on to step two after one instance. And so only then, when you feel you're able to stay reasonably calm on one step, would you then move on to another step, right? So remember that moving too fast can actually be really overwhelming. So it's not about, going and moving up your list really quickly. It's not about starting with the most stressful event. You'll just become overwhelmed, and that could actually exacerbate that fear response. So what you want to do is make sure that you take it really nice and slow, only moving on to that next step when you're able to imagine the step and stay relatively calm. And if you don't feel comfortable doing this on your own, remember that you can always get support with something like this. The third thing to do is to anchor yourself in the positive. So the purpose of negative emotions is to prompt us to take action. So when fear shows up, the message is avoid this, right? And the purpose of positive emotions is resilience and recovery from stress. So you can strengthen your ability to stay calm and to withstand the anxiety by actively seeking out positive emotions. So this is not about kind of being positive, it's about intentionally seeking out good feelings that will anchor you and keep you distracted from worried thoughts. Understanding that positive emotion actually calms down the protective system in the brain, making it less likely to activate a strong fear response, right? So the night before flight, maybe you plan to do something that makes you really happy. During the flight, even the movies that you choose to watch can help. So picking a comedy or picking something inspiring, which will elicit warm, positive feelings, rather than going for, let's say, an action or a thriller, which is actually going to just add to the stress levels. So oxytocin, which is often called the love hormone or the cuddle hormone, is especially powerful in calming the body's stress response. So you may want to, if you're flying with someone, hold the hand of a loved one or go through photos of a happy time during takeoff, and that can actually help you to stay calmer. And the final step is to breathe, right? Have you ever noticed how during any stressful situation, we hold our breath? So your protective system causes you to do this the moment it decides that you're at risk, because what happens is that holding the breath actually accelerates the stress response. It makes you more sensitive to everything that's going on around you, and that really is activating that protective system response. So the best thing you can do to calm yourself when you're experiencing fear or panic is to breathe slowly. This is simple, but really powerful because it reverses the body's stress response and sends the message to your brain that I'm safe, right? Which is exactly what your brain needs to hear at that point. So the points that I've given you above will strengthen you to be more resilient in preparation for taking a flight. We can always take two approaches. We want to build up and strengthen our resilience. Those will help reduce your fear of flying over time, but then breathing slowly can help you to cope with panic when it arises. So what you might do is you might, in order to use your breath in a really intentional way, is you want to sit up really straight and breathe deep into your belly rather than just thinking about breathing in here. So we breathe nice and deep into our belly, and you might breathe to a 4-4-4-4 count. So breathing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and keep repeating. Mainly this is about slowing down the breath, especially breathing out, right? You can go at whatever pace feels right for you, as long as we're slowing it down. And you might even place your hand over your heart to calm yourself further, right? So this is something that you can do. You can also find, so I absolutely love on the Calm app, they have a breathe button and it kind of prompts you to breathe if you want a visual stimulus too. And something like this can help you to stay calm, especially during those stressful bits of the flight, such as when there's turbulence or it's takeoff or it's landing. Well, that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Every subscriber counts, and it helps this information to reach more people. Thank you, and I'll see you next week on the Positive EQ Perspective. If you're looking to calm negative thoughts, accept yourself, and live joyfully, then you need my free roadmap to overcome negative thinking. You'll discover 7 steps to follow, as well as 3 mistakes most people make trying to improve their mindset and life that only make things worse. Visit positiveeq.com/free. That's positiveeq.com/free.